Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah. Dear students, welcome back to our sessions for the subject Human Resource Management. Today's topic is about training and development. This is actually one of the main functions of Human Resource Management, and this very specific function focuses more on a change of individuals' behavior. We're talking about training as one of the determinant of individuals' behavior toward preferable kind of output, and that is why Human Resource Department always pays attention to the training and development requirements. In our session today, we will discuss the following issues. So our objectives regarding the session will be: number one, describe the basic training process. Illustrate how you would go about identifying training requirements. Designing a training program, which is a very important issue. Evaluate 5 different training techniques and explain how to evaluate the training program. In regards to these objectives, we have the following contents: training process, training requirements, designing a training program, training techniques, and the evaluation of the training program. Now we go to the introduction here. Training is actually an effort initiated by the company itself, the means of which is actually to foster a learning mode among its members. In other words, it provokes a change in their individual's behavior through learning. But this change should be actually designed to come up with the desired results. Training also tends to be narrowly focused and oriented toward short-term performance concerns. And that is why we have 2 concepts here. One is about training, which is for the short-term performance concern. The other one is about development, which is addressing long-run kind of output. So here, development, on the other hand, is an effort that is oriented more toward broadening an individual's skills for the future responsibilities. So that's why development is more about top management and managerial kind of expertise. On the other hand, it's about establishing a long-run kind of asset the company would like to utilize through either employees, of course, or the managers themselves. Now, the first type of orientation we might face in companies, which is quite common here, is the orientation. So, in other words, we say orienting employees, especially those newcomers to the company. For example, here, orientation as a definition is a procedure for providing new employees with basic background information about the company. Now, this kind of information is of great importance to the company because it highlights where the company should go. It should convey the message to the employees, the newcomers, on the importance of the objectives of the company that have been set and the procedures needed to achieve them. At the minimum here, employee handbooks should be provided, which encapsulate everything about the company, starting from the vision, mission, objectives, strategies, background about the company itself, and the like kind of information that the company would like the newcomers to be quite aware of. Now, why do we need orientation here? Orientation helps new employees in different aspects. For example, they need to feel welcome and at ease. So they feel comfortable the time they get the job. So at the end, this is a behavior that is exhibited by the employee which is joining the company. So the company, as a means of welcoming, will provide such kind of training referred to as orientation. Another issue is to understand the organization in terms of vision, the mission, the broad goals, and the specific and smart objectives. Also to get expected work and behavior from the employees. Now, you know the rules and policies, our vision and mission. Now, this is the kind of work you're supposed to handle. So, enlightening the newcomers of the things that's supposed to be done is another purpose of orientation. Finally, begin the socialization process. Now, people or the newcomers to the organization must somehow know how to blend in. This might be very difficult at the very beginning, considering different personalities. However, orientation programs can help employees better blend in with their own co-workers. The system approach to training and development can be as follows. We have 5 phases as follow. Number 1 is, of course, here the assessment or assessing the need of training. Of course, when we talk about training, we refer to either a potential problem that might happen because of weaknesses, deficiencies of some employees. Sometimes it can be another opportunity that the company would like to seize. But in order to do that, they need to upgrade and enhance the capability of the employees, maybe in specific functions. So that is why they would like to analyze why we need training. The need of this kind of training is actually the first step. And we have the program instructional design. As we define the needs, then we have to think of the instructional design. The validation of the program as to the, of course, needs. The implementation in terms of what, where, when, and how, and evaluation of the training. Now we start with the first one here as a 4-step training and development process. Need analysis. As we said before, in order to assess the need, we need to analyze the need. So that's why we have need analysis. In analyzing the need, we start quite big and then we drop down smaller, meaning we always focus on the strategic orientation or the main objective of the business itself and how is it linked to the departmental kind of output and to main sections. So the companies here would like to come up with a training program that is directly linked to the overall corporate objective. So that's why need analysis is an important issue. As we are clear with the needs assessment, the reason why we have to design a training, that we go to the instructional design, the implementation, and of course finally the evaluation. Now this type of process is actually used by many companies, but the most important point, of course, is about needs analysis. There are a lot of researches in different countries, among which is USA, of companies that spend a lot of money for training of no use. And that is why it's really of great importance that companies would like first to highlight the importance of such kind of training based on the first step, which is the need analysis. But how do we do it is as follows. Phase 1, conducting the needs assessment. The organization analysis here, as you said before, we start at a bigger level here, that is the corporate level. So an examination of the environment, strategies, resources of the organization, so that we can determine where training emphasis should be placed. So here we're looking into a bigger picture as we talk about the requirements, the needs of training. So by looking at the environment, we might either seize an opportunity in the market, for example, or detect a threat. So either of which, the company would like to understand what is the second step, okay, according to such kind of analysis, which might be a training. Sometimes strategies of the company, the strategies that have been set by top management according to the analysis of the environment, might require some kind of training, because at the end, the doers, the one who achieves such kind of strategies, are actually the employees. Besides resources here, the kind of devices, appliances used, the premises, working condition together with the tools, all are important to consider in the training decision-making process. So this is the first one, which is about the organization. Then as we drop down, we go a little bit smaller here. As we are clear with the organizational environment as for the analysis, we go more specific into the task analysis. So here, the process of determining what the content of training program should be on the basis of study of the tasks and duties involved in the job. In other words, we study the task that the employee is supposed to handle even before he is nominated to do the job. So this kind of requirement or analysis is more about the task itself and disregards of the employee who should handle this task. So according to the requirements of these tasks, we might need some kind of training to polish the skills or the experiences. For example, certain kind of competencies need to be polished before we assign this job to the employees. The last one here is about the person analysis. Now, as we're done with the organization analysis, then we analyze the task. Now we go to the person himself. Here, determination of the specific individuals who need training. Now this can be more about the result of the performance within the middle of the year, at the end of the financial year, for example. In different intervals of the year, this actually varies from one company to another. But according to the output of the performance appraisal, okay, which is you assess and evaluate the performance of individuals, and accordingly you might come up with the requirement with the need of training. So this goes more directly to the person based on past performance. Unlike the task analysis, this might be based on past performance, while task analysis is just about the task itself. So requiring some kind of training according to the dexterity needs by this task or the level of difficulty. Now the needs assessment for training here. Now we have three levels we have to consider. The first one is the organization, the task, and the person. For example, the environment, strategy, resources to determine where to emphasize training as you go to organization. Talking about the task, we talk about the skills, we talk about the level of competencies, we talk about the knowledge itself that should be available for anyone who is handling this kind of job. So here, of any kind of activities to be performed in order to determine the key SAs needed. That is knowledge, skill, and ability needed by the employees. The person analysis here is his or her performance, knowledge, and skills in order to determine who needs training. And that is why this is more based on the appraising process than it is on the person himself. Now, analyzing training needs. Now, for the training needs analysis, we have two issues. The first one is called task analysis. Now, as we say task analysis, we're talking about the task itself. So there would be no need here to discuss past issues. So assessing new employees' training needs. We're actually considering the level of difficulties in a given task. So we think about the future and the performance of the new employees in the future. While on the other hand, we have performance analysis. Now this is more about what has been done in the past. So assessing current employees' training needs. Now the current employees' training needs is actually linked to the performance of those employees. So the analysis of the training needs could be either based on the task analysis, okay, requirements of tasks to be handled properly, or based on the outcome of the employees, the current employees, regarding his or her performance. Now, designing the training program, the second phase here. Issues we have to take in consideration as we design the program as follows. First of all will be the objectives, instructional objectives, the trainee readiness and motivation, the principles of learning, and the characteristics of successful trainers. So remember, designing the training program is actually the core element of training. So if this done improperly, the outcome of training and the evaluation will not be good. So better we do it right from the first step. So the first step is actually considering the needs, why we need the training program. Once we are clear with this, now we go toward designing. Now designing is actually of different phases or stages. First of all is the objectives, instructional objectives. For example, this represents the desired outcomes of a training program. For example, why do we handle this training? What do we want to get at the end of this training program or development? So it must be linked to the performance expected by the employees. So that's why we call them performance-centered objectives, meaning the objectives should be clear enough, specific and measurable so that we can see the result in the behavior of the employees. Provide a basis for choosing methods and materials and for selecting the means for assessing whether the instruction will be successful. So as we talk about SMART objectives, we also talk about the SMART objectives in training. So our objectives must be linked to the output of the employees themselves. So we talk about performance-centered objectives. They should be quite specific so that we can come up with the methods needed, the materials required for handling the training. The progress of the training should be clear enough to be measured, and there must also be some kind of time boundary for the training to measure the effectiveness of training. Now the second point is the strategy or the trainee readiness and motivation. How can we come up with means used to motivate employees? In other words, to what extent can companies motivate employees in handling the training requirements? So here, strategies for creating a motivated training environment can be as follows. Of course, the first one is using positive reinforcement. Here, we're addressing the individuals, and the ultimate goal is to link their performance to the standards we would like or the standards we have already set. But the only problem that we may face here regarding that issue is to what extent is the trainee ready. So that's why companies might enhance such kind of readiness using positive reinforcement, like monetary rewards, for example, or promotion according to the exhibited performance and the future, of course. Eliminating threats and punishment. This is another way in order to be effective, to create readiness, to motivate the trainees to attend and participate and change behavior. So it is really better to use positive reinforcement than we use threats and punishment. Also being flexible in terms of time, the number of amount, the frequency of practices in the training program, of course the number of hours a day, if it's the program designed to be in 1 day, 2 days, a week, etc. Have a participant or have participants set personal goals. That is another issue. Sometimes this can help a lot in achieving the objectives of the training. So personal goals of individuals can also help motivate them to attend attentively this training. Design interesting instruction. Break down physical and psychological obstacles to learning. By this, we need to understand different individuals' needs and wants as to the training set, the training interface, the materials used, the timing, the place, etc., so that all these issues actually fit with what the employees would like to get. Phase number 3, implementing the training program, which is the action stage. So as we start conducting the training program now, we need to choose the instruction and method. For example, the nature of training, the type of trainees, the organizational context of training, and the importance of training outcomes. So these are issues to consider as we use the method of instruction. Now, training methods for non-managerial employees. Now, who do we refer to by non-managerial employees here? As we talk about ordinary work, for example, like that in the picture, we can have different ways to handle training. For example, on-the-job training. On-the-job training fits more the kind of businesses that operates outdoor. Quite specifically, if you talk about manufacturing industries, where the unit of the work is quite clear and that there is a series of actions and processes that the employee should go through to finish the job. So practicing on such kind of things on the job itself can help acquiring the skills needed. Also here, learning, training by learning is another method of training used by a lot of companies. Classroom instructions, programmed instructions, for example. Audio-visual methods. This can also cut down on cost, but less effective, of course, from the previous types. But still, this is among the methods that can be used by companies to handle the trainings. Other method could be computer-based training, or the CBT. Now, again, this type of method is only used to fit the nature of business, because what goes right for the first one may not necessarily go right for another kind of business. So the industry, the nature of the job itself, the requirement of the tasks, and the level of the work itself might help choosing the right method. Finally, we have simulation method, in which a scenario is created to adapt similar circumstances, and that the employee will be trained to do tasks in such similar circumstances. Now, on the job training, we said before, you learn by observing and you learn by practicing. So this is one of the most practical methods of training. So the method by which employees are giving hands-on experience with instructions from their supervisor or other trainer. In other words, they actually observe and try to imitate. So that is why it's based on an instantaneous means of training. They can use machineries at the same time of conducting the training itself. So as they observe, they try to practice, they learn from their mistakes, and they try to avoid, they try to enhance certain kind of capability they used not to have them as they do the job at that time. However, there are some shortcomings here or drawbacks. For example, the lack of well-structured training environment can be one of the problems. So remember, we're talking about field kind of training. So if you don't have well-structured training environment that supports this kind of method, then this method won't help. Besides, poor training skills of managers. If I only rely on managers to handle this kind of training, because simply the learners are supposed to learn by observing the managers. If the managers are not doing the job properly, so the poor performance will be copied by employees, and that is another disadvantages of on-the-job kind of training. The absence of well-trained job performance criteria is another issue. Besides these problems, we can also have issues that might affect or hinder the success of such methods, like timing, the place, for example, the complexity of the materials used, sometimes the big difference and the gap between reality, where they have to work, and the tools they've been trying to apply as they start working. For example, at specific time or phases from this kind of method, they can be trained to do things they're not supposed to do unless they handle previous kind of tasks. So that will create a lot of stress on the trainee as it takes some time to handle all the tasks systematically. Training methods here, as you said, apprenticeship training. This is more based on learning from the other. For example, a system of training in which a worker entering the skilled trades is given throughout instruction and experience. So both and off the job, both on and off the job, in the practical and theoretical aspect of the work. So this can be used by companies addressing such kind of training to fresh employees. For example, graduate students who join companies, so they can gain more experiences, more knowledge about how to do things in a given position by learning from experienced people. Cooperative training is another method. A training program that combines practical on-the-job experience with formal educational classes. So here, this is a kind of link to gap what has been taught, what has been learned actually from courses, to the practicality in organization, what they are supposed to do in the company itself, with of course the help of the instructional means and tools by the trainers. Internship programs is another methods of training, but again, the nature of business can somehow help determine the right method for training. These are jointly sponsored by universities and other organizations that offer students the opportunity to gain real life experience while allowing them to find out how they will perform in work organizations. Now, this has been adopted by many universities in the current time. So, for example, it can be referred to as industrial training or practical training, where students are sent to companies or factories so that they learn from these real life kind of work. So whether the employee here, whether the students will carry on the job with the business or go back to the university, this kind of source of candidates will help the company gain more professional employees who have already linked what they learned with what's already done in, of course, the real life. Classroom instruction enables the maximum number of trainees to be handled by the minimum number of instructors. This can also help regarding issues affiliating with customers' contact, relationship, specifically if the number of, let us assume that a company has over 200 employees. So classroom instruction will help cut down on cost and of course help gain those employees the right knowledge needed for their jobs. So here, blended learning, lectures and demonstrations are combined with films, DVDs, videotapes or computer instructions. Whatsoever kind of means that are used in the classroom to imitate the environment of the work itself can be used here. Programmed instruction is another means or method for training here. For example, self-directed learning, such as the use of books and manuals or computers to break down subject matter content into highly organized logical sequences that demand continuous response on the part of the trainee. Now, this can help, especially if you're talking about medium level of management, where employees here are of high self-discipline and the motivation to learn is of course high. So such kind of instructions, programmed instructions as method, can be very successful. Audiovisual methods. Here, the use of tools like video recordings, CDs and DVDs. Teleconferencing, video conferencing here, and web conferencing can also help. here, if you're considering a company that has different plants in different geographic areas, like Siemens. Siemens has over 150 plants around the world. So they can simply transfer this knowledge they get in different plants to another plants in other countries. So the channel being used here to help the employees get the kind of knowledge will be, of course, through such kind of means. Communities of practice, blogs, and wikis are also things that can be used to utilize such kind of method. Now we have simulation here. Simulation method emphasizes realism in equipment and its operation at a minimum cost and maximum safety. So here, adopting such kind of technology where the trainee can achieve certain kind of tasks in a scenario similar to that in reality. So in terms of the training requirements and the materials used in training, there will be no need for such kind of tools. So the cost here will be at its minimum, while it will be safe actually to practice in such scenario. So this used when it's either impractical or unwise to train employees on the actual equipment used on the job. So that can be used if you're talking about heavy machineries, hazardous working conditions. So instead of getting employees involved in such kind of unsafe circumstances, we can somehow help them gain the right experiences, the kind of knowledge they would like to get about such kind of tools or machineries by simulation, which is a good method of training. We also have electronic learning. So learning that takes place via such web and computer-based training. It allows the firm to bring the training to employees. The cost of such kind of training is very low. Effectiveness can be very high considering the right needs of the training. A lot of employees can also be addressed utilizing e-learning. And of course provides continuously updated training materials. So the sources used for training can be quite vast, and this is one of the good tools of learning. Learning management system here, the virtual learning environment, they can register them for courses. These kind of programs can help the trainees to go through different courses systematically within time limits and to reaching the desired results. Now the desired results here is a change in his or her behavior according to these systematic progress or the progress of training as for the courses that have been set through the LMS. And that is why this is also one of the good methods adopted by different companies. So here can evaluate and track their progress, because in LMS here we have maybe 2, 3 or 4 programs all registered in the LMS. Now the employees should go through them accordingly. Now the progress here is in terms of passing the requirements of the first stage, the moving to the other, to the another one, and the third one until they finish the course and acquire the right needed knowledge or dexterity. Now management development here. We talk about developing managerial position, which is a little bit different than we talk about employees. Remember, training is actually for short-term concern. But when we talk about top management here, we may refer to strategizing, analyzing, synthesizing. So the level of training will be a little bit higher. It will address long-run kind of concerns. So that is why there will be different kind of methods considering the management development. But of course, on-the-job experiences will be part of it. Seminars and conferences, case studies. Here, you notice that it is more about strategizing and analyzing than it is in operation. Management games, role-playing, and behavior modeling. On the job experience here, like for example coaching, under-study assignment here, job rotation, lateral transfer, special projects, action learning. Now all these kind of materials that can be used to enhance the managerial capacity in dealing with high position kind of requirements. Now we're not talking about operational level or front desk kind of requirements. We're talking about the top management of the company and the kind of requirements they need to have to achieve the jobs. Case studies on the other hand, the use of case studies is most appropriate when, for example, analytic, problem solving, critical thinking skills are most important. Once again, we're talking about managerial kind of requirements. So the kind of training will be more about these high level of skills, which are more about intellectuality than it is about handling jobs. So that's why we talk about analytic, problem solving, and critical thinking skills. The knowledge, skills, and abilities are complex, and participants need time to master them. So if this happens, so we use case studies to help them handle the tasks properly. Now they can learn from these similar cases, and that is also based on the kind of job, the nature of the task assigned. Now the active participation is desired by different participants or learnees, trainees here. The process of learning, questioning, interpreting, and so on. Remember, the point is about a real life kind of case in which we have some kind of scenarios that are similar to the ones that the manager or the managers are supposed to handle. So that is why they have to address some kind of questions. So that's why we have questioning. Whether the kind of practices and tasks that have been done by the managers in the case were right or not. They have to interpret the information in the case according to the objectives, to the scenario set, to the needs, okay, and other elements like the time, the complexity of the scenario, etc. So that's why these kind of cases are of great importance, are really valuable for managers to link scenarios of real life kind of actions, and is as important as the content themselves. Team problem solving and interaction are possible. So the more interaction is in a group, the better the case study should be. Information will be shared out among those people who interact with each other properly. So that's why this is another better way of training managerial positions. Successful role play requires that instructors. Here we're talking about role play, and we're talking about the instructors. In order to come up with the right or desired objectives here, we have to maintain the following points. For example, we need to ensure the group members are comfortable with each other. Besides, we need to select and prepare the role players by introducing a specific situation. So the more provoking, the more they interact, and that is why it's important. To help participants prepare, ask them to describe potential character, and also realize that volunteers make better role players. So they learn by doing. Okay, so that is why these points are actually very important when we talk about role play. It's more about the practicality of the training output. So practicing what is being learned is one guarantee for succeeding in the training as with the output. Now here, prepare observers by giving them specific tasks, guide the role play enactment here through its bumps because it is not scripted. Keep it short. Remember, we are talking about role play. This should not be exaggerated, should not be complicated. It should be very specific and short so that people can practice, interpret, and learn. Discuss the enactment and prepare bulleted points for what was learned. So you notice how people act in this scenario as they play the role. So you put the point, you discuss them, come up with feedback, and put the points so that everyone learns from what has been practiced. This is another good way of sharing out ideas based on the role play model. Now, behavior modeling. Behavior modeling, as the name suggests, is more about watching and observing a behavior of an expert. So, an approach that demonstrates desired behavior and gives trainees the chance to practice the role play those behaviors and receive feedback. So, they learn by observing a behavior. This kind of behavior is preferable by the company as for the dexterity, the skill, competencies, dealing with the issues in the role play or the case itself. This involves 4 basic components: the learning points, the model, practice and role play, and of course feedback and reinforcement, maybe motivation. Now the last point is about the evaluation of our training program. So measuring program effectiveness is through different steps. Number 1, the trainee reactions to the training program. The extent of learning that we can observe from the employees in real life practice or as they transfer learning to their own positions. Learning transfer to the job, and results assessment, the final output of employees by the company. So the first criterion, participant reaction. So here the most common approach to training evaluation is assessing the trainees himself or herself. So what were your learning goals for this program? Did you achieve them? Would you recommend it to others who have similar learning goals? What suggestions do you have for improving the program? Now, these are all questions that can be addressed to the trainees in order to check upon the effectiveness of the training for them. They can now notice that there is a difference as for the effectiveness of what they do after the training program. So the information that we can gather from them can be very valuable in designing future training programs. Now learning, checking to see whether they actually learned anything. So here, testing knowledge and skills before beginning a training program gives a baseline standard on trainees that can be later measured again after training to determine improvement. Now you know the level is up to here before training, so this will be the standard by which you can evaluate the training if the output goes this way. So by this you can say the effectiveness of the training is actually maintained. However, in addition to testing trainees, test employees who did not attend the training so that we can estimate the differential effect of the training. Now, instead of using the trainees as a means of evaluation, we use other trainers or other employees who did not attend the training course, and then we try to see to what extent their behavior in similar jobs are different. The third point is about the behavior itself, which is a good way to measure the effectiveness of training. So here, transfer of training, effective application of principles learned to what is required in the job. In other words, what has been learned must be practiced in real life. Maximizing the transfer of training, how can we do that? and how can we maximize such process, which is what should be done as for the training contents and how to do it in reality. We have 4 points. Feature identical elements. So as they train using these elements, they will find the same elements in reality. So expected performance will be the same. Focus on general principles. Establish a climate for transfer which can help them transfer what they learned into the positions. Give employee transfer strategies which can also help achieve such kind of output. And then the last one is about the results or return on investment. So measuring the utility of training program. In order to do that, we have different questions. For example, how much did quality improve because of the training program? Are there other reasons, or is it all linked to the quality of the training? How much has it contributed to profits? What reduction in turnover and wasted materials did the company get after training? How much has productivity increased, and by how much have costs been reduced? Now, if all these points are actually the output of training, we can then answer the question relating to the return of investment. The output of training helps the company invest more in its cost, in its materials, cutting down more of the costs in the past, eliminating the wasted materials used before the training, and fostering better performance by the employees, which directly affects the final output of the company itself. So return on investment as well here, viewing training in terms of the extent to which it provides knowledge, skills, and dexterity that create competitive advantage. Now this competitive advantage will gain the company further sales, better reputation, so it can help the company maintain good relationship with customers, so etc. So such kind of output is actually a good result of training, which can also be a good measurement. So results divided by the training cost to measure whether it was really valuable and of great value to the company itself. For example, if the return of investment ratio is bigger than 1, the benefits of the training exceed the cost of the program. However, the opposite, the cost of training exceeds the benefits. So here, that means either the need assessment of the training was not appropriate, or if it was appropriate here, and there's actually a need to handle training, instructional, maybe the instructional issues regarding the training were not planned very well, the kind of methods used were not good enough, or they should have been using different kind of methods according to the type of work. So there can be some issues here regarding the materials used, or the cost affiliating with the training whatsoever, that the company can figure out the reason why return on investment is actually less than 1, meaning the cost of training exceeds the benefits. There would be no need to handle training in this issue, or maybe the training itself was planned in a poor way. So by this, dear students, we come to the end of our session. We discussed different issues as follows. We discussed the basic training process. We talked about the training requirements, and we discussed how to design a training program. We have different training techniques, so we discussed 5 different training techniques, and we also explained how to evaluate the training program. As you know, dear students, there will be an attachment, number 7 here, together with this session, where you have to address the questions according to the time set by the program. Thank you very much for listening to this session. I wish you all the best. See you inshallah in next session. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.